Hi folks, we're back again today at Green Lane Park. It's November 5th and today we're going to be talking about bones, the most permanent part of birds and mammals and some other creatures. But here at Green Lane Park we use bones for a variety of educational programs. We do a lot of programming for youth, for school-age kids, preschool, school age, and adults. And these bones come in real handy because one of the subject areas we address are mammals and their adaptations. And so we can tell a lot about an animal, about what it eats, about its lifestyle, whether it's an herbivore or carnivore or omnivore, by its bones and especially its skull, its dentition. So we collect bones. We find them naturally in the park because these animals don't last forever. The bones last a very long time though, after the rest of the critter has decayed. So once we have bones, a couple things. First thing, if you're touching dead stuff, is you want to be safe. You want to do this in a safe and sanitary fashion. So I don't go picking up any parts of dead critters without wearing some protective rubber, some kind of latex gloves, surgical gloves, whatever you want to call them, like this. So once we find the animal, couple steps in the process, depending, sometimes Mother Nature does the work for you and you'll find them relatively clean and bleached by the sun. Not always the case though. Sometimes there's some bits of fur and flesh attached. So your next job becomes processing those bones. So in a pot with over a fire, or better yet, an electric hot plate like this, we can cook these bones and get a lot of the nasty stuff off. And again, this is not for the faint of heart or weak of stomach. And another thing I have to caution people about, if you're picking up dead things, you don't want to be picking up roadkill. There's legal issues and, more important, or just as importantly, safety issues with that. It's illegal in a lot of states, so when in doubt, assume you might be breaking the law. And also, you don't want to become roadkill yourself. You don't want to be picking things up on the side of the highway and heaven forbid, get hit by a car. Don't do that. So once we start cooking the things, the bits of flesh and nastiness and fur and so on begin to kind of peel away from the bones. And then there's a couple other things you might need. Some forceps come in real handy. A wire brush, preferably small in size, to get into some nooks and crannies. And then as you're pulling things with the forceps, a utility or X-Acto knife, be real careful. Don't try this at home, okay? Real sharp. And then you can just kind of peel and just start slicing and disposing of that flesh that you don't want, because it's going to smell as the decay process continues. So the cooking part of the process, it's really as needed, or as much as needed. Now, you don't want to overboil bones because they'll take on kind of a yellowish, nasty kind of a coloration, which you probably don't want. What most people want is something that looks like it's been whitened or bleached by the sun. But we'll get into why letting Mother Nature do all the work, that can be a problem too, which we'll get into here shortly. So after you've cooked the bones to your satisfaction, removed any bits of flesh or fur, next process is you want to rinse them with cold water, dry them ideally, and then comes the whitening process. Now I try not to use the term bleaching. Back in the old school way was to use chlorine bleach. Bad news, because it'll kill germs, but it also will destroy bone over time. You don't want to do that. So hydrogen peroxide, readily available in a drugstore or supermarket, and usually you're going to be stuck with a 3% solution. It's good enough. It's a lot more problematic to get a higher concentration, like 12% or 20-something%. 3% will work, and it's about 99 cents a quart last I checked. So relatively inexpensive. Now you could, I've heard of people using straight peroxide to get this nice whitened, clean bone look here. But the quantities we do, in addition to education, we have this interesting program called a haunted hayride every October, and we have massive quantities of bones, mostly deer bones, that we salvage in the park. So when we're dealing with big volume, you want to cut this with water. So I have settled on a solution, just a 1-to-1 ratio, 1 part water to 1 part hydrogen peroxide, and then you want a bucket, preferably one with a nice snug fitting lid like this. Deli pickles, I think, yeah. once upon a time, but now it's just for whitening bones. So the tight seal, peroxide, if left to its own devices, tends to be kind of volatile and kind of lose its effectiveness over time. So that tight seal, 1-to-1 ratio, and you have to just experiment with it. You might be happy after 24 hours. You might want to go a little longer, 48 hours. And with that 1-to-1 ratio, I've gone on some bones that are real brown and nasty looking. I've gone closer to 100 hours in the solution, but I just check it roughly once or twice a day and see how the whitening process is coming along. And then again, when you remove them from the chlorine bleach, from the peroxide, I mean to say, always want to be careful handling chemicals of any kind. So gloves are a real good idea. Sometimes gloves like these, or sometimes heavier duty gloves, more like these, but they're rubber and will keep you safe. But after you've completed the whitening process, you want to rinse those bones and then air dry them, and then they're ready to display or to use in educational programs. So, what else do we need to talk about? Oh yes. Now, if you're real fortunate and you're out and about, you'll find something like this, a deer antler or a deer skull with antlers attached, what's known in the business as a European mount, because apparently in Europe they don't put false eyeballs and things and fur and things like that to display them. So this is how nature would leave it. But a couple things: if you find something like this with the antlers attached, you want to clean the skull up, get all the bits of meat and flesh and fur and so on off. But the antlers you want to be a little more protective of. So when I'm cooking something like this, you have to get real creative to prop it up with bricks, whatever you can find that'll work on the bottom of the pot, and keep those antlers elevated. And this is even more important when you get to the whitening process. Most people don't want these antlers. They might want the skull whitened, but not the antlers. So they have that natural look, kind of the brownish tones down here where they meet the skull. And so again, there's ways with different kinds of things you can find around the house or the garage to prop it up, keep those antlers, the base of the antlers, above the line of the liquid where your solution is, your peroxide solution. Now sometimes you'll find something in nature, if you're real lucky. This I think of as the holy grail in the world of bones, because it's a deciduous bone. And deer antlers, or anything in the deer family, so moose, caribou, elk, and so on, shed their antlers annually, late in the winter usually. And you don't want to do anything, because this is just such a work of art as it is. You don't want to do anything to it. So if you're lucky enough to find one of these on the ground, it's ready to display as is, because you don't want to lose those natural qualities, especially those brownish stains, if you will, or brownish coloration down toward the base of the antler. And the other thing about antlers and bones in general, if you don't get there before another human finds them, someone else might find them. Someone like a squirrel or a mouse, any kind of rodent, goes after bones for the minerals, especially the calcium inside. So if you look closely here, you see this is all kinds of marked up with the incisor marks from our squirrel and mouse friends. And so it becomes kind of a foot race between you and the rodents to get there before they do, because this is just, it's interesting for education reasons, but not that pretty to display on a shelf in your home probably. So when you want to look for those shed antlers is late winter, so think early February to the beginning of April, and that's pretty much your window. If you don't find them by then, vegetation grows up real quick, and of course the rodents are out there chewing away on them. So these bones look like they're about cooked enough. So what we're going to do is, again, can't be too careful messing with this heat. So I'm going to double glove and carefully lift these bones out of our liquid here. And yeah, we have some pretty nicely cooked, hot, steamy bones. And we're just gonna set them off to the side here and out of harm's way. let them cool a little bit, and again, as needed, then you can go after them with a kitchen scrubby, or again, your wire brush to get any bits of meat and smelly stuff off there. And then once you rinse them, you could dry them, don't have to. Then they go into the peroxide water solution. And that is pretty much bone processing 101. So thanks for joining us, and see you again soon.